the things that I'm asking of them today were unimaginable 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? Because for a lot of students, they're able to go from intro material to really advanced, really cool things in a little time, right? And in Python, think about how lots of us learn Python, right? In particular, we learn it because we want to build something, right? Whether or not that's an app or even some kind of data science tool or something like that. I mean, LLMs help you build something. That's undisputed.
Welcome to the Tech Pubcast, a behind-the-scenes look at what it really takes to write and publish a technical book. I'm your host, Jess Haberman. I'm a literary agent, publishing consultant, and former acquisitions editor with nearly 20 years of experience publishing books. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Blake Rayfield to the podcast. Hello, Blake. Do you want to share a brief introduction?
Thank you, Jess. My name is Blake Rayfield. I'm currently an assistant professor of finance and fintech at the University of North Florida, and of course, the most recent author of Applied Math with Python, solving real-world problems with Python. So, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Welcome. Congrats on your new book, published
Thank
by
you.
Wiley. Blake and I got to work together on this project, which was really fun. There's just like a good foundation in math that I think a lot of folks who kind of make their way into kind of data science and AI and machine learning adjacent work realize that they they need to have. So I think that would stuff, it's just a great area to kind of dive in a little bit further. It's a good kind of amount to cover in a book. How was the process for you? This was your first book with a major publisher, and what did you learn?
Wow, it was eye-opening. So, as I said in my intro, I'm an academic. So typically, I'm used to publishing. I have lots of published papers. I've written book chapters for academic type books or some kind of papers that are mixing between academia and business. But this was just a totally different ballgame, right? So for me, I had to learn a lot along the way. And we can go into all those details, but I learned a lot along the way, and it was just totally different than anything I'd done before.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, did you feel like the writing process was different, or kind of like the expectations in terms of like how the publishing and editing, like that process goes?
A little bit of both. Typically, if we go into the academic writing process, right? So I write some paper, maybe it's quantitative in nature, right? It has some results in there. Mostly the audience I'm writing for is other academics, right? And so when they go read the paper, I can use all the terms and phrases that they're going to understand. And so when I send it to a journal, right, to hopefully get it published, I know that that's going to be the audience that reads it and gives me feedback. Okay, and so if you can imagine that process, it gets to kind of be a little bit of a game, like repetitive in the sense, right? Like I've gotten really good at that process over the years. So when I went to go write this book, which was of course not at all for that audience, right? There's just a totally new level of expectation, right? I had to make sure that I was connecting with the potential audience that may read my book. I had to make sure that I had all the, of course, when you write a book for a general population, or at least people who are interested in tech books, there's like a whole different expectation on making it nice to read, right? Look a lot nicer, right? In academia, I don't really care how it's formatted so much, right? So we had to make sure that the formatting's right, the sections are right. I mean, it was just like all of that was just a great learning process, though.
Yeah, that's great. There's the sort of vernacular, like there's the vocabulary that you should and shouldn't be using. Like you're trying to simplify things because, right, you're speaking to like a more general audience who may or may not understand some of the more technical concepts and jargon. And it does have to look different on the page, because you are focused on like a print, print books are still selling, are still very
Hmm.
popular. I do that too. I did a lot of like sports and nonfiction and history and outdoor recreation books like early in my career. And we had like different like trim sizes of books. So for example, like some that were really small. So like we were really focused on like where line breaks happened, and like you would mark up like what are called widows and orphans, which like I think even in fiction, a lot of fiction publishers don't even worry about anymore. But it was like so specific to like have it look a certain way on the page or fit a like really specific trim size. So I don't think Wiley is really going too far in the weeds there, but yeah, it's totally different from academic publishing. And it's interesting because you are getting like the kind of the review period. Maybe talk a little bit about like technical review. How did that work in your process? Like, what did you learn out of the feedback that you're getting from your technical reviewers?
Sure. So, of course, like the technical reviewers, the ones who are looking over the code or the math for the book, it was a different process as well, right? So, someone's constantly checking even small snippets of code that I'm putting in there to large snippets of code. And I think for me, some of the really quick feedback that I got was making sure I'm connecting everything. So, again, as someone who writes it either for academia or maybe you're even used to writing code, we know comments are a thing. But even with comments, it doesn't leave enough breadcrumbs for a reader to be able to connect all the sections of code throughout a chapter or even throughout the entire book, right? And so a lot of times in chapters, I would write snippets, small little snippets of code, but maybe that snippet was dependent upon the previous snippet or a section. And that section may have been dependent on something I loaded in a previous section. So that was some of the initial feedback that I received. Otherwise, the code, I mean, if you know how to write code, the code is that. So I think that was the biggest thing.
For folks who are starting like they're writing or working with a publisher, is like, what are the expectations for your code? Is it expected to be like, you're delivering a full like Jupyter notebook of code that you can run alongside the book, maybe as like a downloadable for the reader? Or is it like, yeah, you're illustrating certain concepts with snippets that don't necessarily have to connect to each other? But I think it is really important to think about like how your code like builds, or does it build on prior snippets, things like that.
To add to that, I mean, you mentioned Jupyter Notebook, right? So that's how a lot of people are used to writing this type of code, right? So I mean, of course, you have the app type, which is not in a Jupyter Notebook, but for math and science and statistics, we're used to Jupyter Notebooks, and so with Jupyter Notebooks, everything runs sequentially, and it's all right there, right? So you don't really need to connect it, but and honestly, when I was writing the chapters, that's how I wrote it, was in Jupyter Notebooks. And so for me, it all made sense. But for the readers, you're seeing it presented as snippet of code with explanations and all sorts of other details in there. So it doesn't come like that free flowing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's interesting the way that the format of Jupyter Notebooks have helped us to think about like coding differently and help us to think about writing books differently. Like when I was at O'Reilly, we did have a lot of authors submit books via Jupyter Notebook, or at least use that kind of style, that linear style of like everything sort of building on, and that you can mix sort of, markup and code. Jupyter Notebooks have not been around forever, so it feels like a kind of interesting format, that really aligned itself really well with books. But yeah, it sounds like you found that format pretty useful for your drafting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to put in a plug for the book too, I put my Jupyter notebooks on GitHub, so they're available. I mean, as you read the chapters, you could just go reference those. And of course, the code is run sequentially there. So even if you miss the footnote that says you needed to run a previous section, it's all there.
Yeah, exactly. I guess in terms of like expectations when you're going into working with a publisher on this kind of book, like what were some of the like the biggest misconceptions that you sort of were clarified for you during this process?
I think having edited a technical book before I wrote the technical book, you learn pretty quickly that editors all have different expectations of what that technical book will both look like and also what they expect, for example, the chapter links to be or the sections to look like, or it's really from person to person. So I think that was one of the biggest misconceptions that I was going in thinking it was going to be like the other technical book that I had worked on, or maybe one that I had read. Whereas again, it's kind of a dance between you and your other editors on the team to see like what is going to work for you and them and everybody. So I think it's really, collective work. So I think that was one of the biggest misconceptions.
Yeah. I think to your earlier point about reviewing content in sections, like that's another real benefit of having a technical reviewer who is with you for the whole book, because like they can help you see like where you need to kind of make connections across different chapters and code snippets and things like that. They see kind of like the long game. So that's something to keep in mind when you're like, often a publisher, it will ask authors for recommendations on who they think would be a good tech reviewer. So someone who, has the time and attention to support you throughout the whole process is great. Doesn't have to work that way, but it does, I think, really benefit the sort of the long tail of writing, which like it is like a long process.
And absolutely, I can say, I mean, your team is the one kind of that covers for you too. So, I mean, as you start to get in the weeds deep in the book, they may have shortened deadlines, you may have shortened deadlines. So it's gotta be a great relationship. And luckily I had a great team. I loved everybody that was there. So, but yeah, it's definitely important to have a good team.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Was there anything that you found like to be harder than expected? Like what was hardest for you while you're working on the book?
Just writing enough. I mean, I'll go back to my
Yeah.
academic roots. So going back to academic roots, we kind of get to the point, right? So meaning like when there's a point we're trying to make, it's a pretty short and condensed, like here's the point, right? But here I think one of the harder things for me, and this is one of those like learned bad behaviors, is that I had to make sure that I kind of gave it enough detail, and kind of talked about it in more than just here's the point. So that was one of the most difficult things for me to get over, but that's not going to be everybody.
Yeah, right. A lot of folks have the opposite problem. They write
Yeah.
too much and then you got to edit it down. But it is easier to edit down than to like build up more and more. So I
Yeah.
definitely hear you on that. Was there any sort of like habit or system for you that helped you kind of with either that part of the process or just helped you kind of like in your regular writing, helped you sit down and get a chunk of writing done at a time?
Yeah, I'm a kind of old school in the sense of making outlines before I write. So I love to make outlines. And really, that's kind of my writing process from the beginning. And that's kind of how I expanded it as well, right? So that I found that when I made the outline, I had an idea of about how long each section was going to be. And so the more details, the more, sub points, sub bullets I can put inside of the outline, I could expand certain chapters and continue on and on. And honestly, you talked about the bigger picture. The outlines really help with the bigger picture as well. So for example, I think I have a chapter early on that's about visualization, and then I have a later chapter that's about more detailed visualization. So the outlines kind of helped me build on, more advanced topics of visualization without covering everything again and making sure that I got enough content in there.
Yeah. Did your outline pretty much stay the same throughout the process, or did you find that you had to make adjustments like as you went through?
Ironically, there was only one big change, and that was just to make more content. But otherwise, my outline remained pretty stable. I had the outline, and after some of the first feedback, it was just making sure we had enough content in there.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad to have to amend your outline, your table of contents while you're in progress. But I think if it does stay the same, it's uncommon. And it just shows that you've done a lot of prep before, like, I mean, we worked together on putting together a really strong proposal for Wiley. I know we went back and forth on the proposal and sort of like kind of worked to find the right niche, worked to find the right place for it on Wiley's list, which is something that I think a lot of authors don't really think about is like, oh, what other books has Wiley published? What are they working on right now that we, might not be clear in the market yet? And like where do they want their list to go? So I think just like the publisher's list is something that's like kind of a foreign concept to a lot of authors, which like is where I think I am able to help as an agent to start to anticipate like where what publishers are looking to do. I think Wiley in particular, unlike O'Reilly, who has been publishing in this space for a very long time and has a really robust list in terms of AI, machine learning, data science, math. I know because I published a bunch of them while I was there. Wiley was sort of diving into this topic area a little later. So they had a lot of like kind of gaps in their list where there were like bigger opportunities for us to fill. So that was fun to be able to kind of like work with them to find like hone in and the right proposal for them. How was that process, do you think, for you in terms of crafting the proposal and tweaking it to kind of get it to an acceptable stage?
Man, I mean, to your point, Jess, you're a lifesaver there. So, I mean, you obviously, as you just pitched to us here, I mean, you did a great job. It's a crowded space, right? So you have all the technical books that are out there. You mentioned O'Reilly. I mean, all their content, Wiley, and really self-publishing too, right? You have all of this stuff out there. Finding the right niche was really difficult, and that's definitely where you came in and helped. And I think that was one of the things for me is that I just wanted to make sure I was writing a book that was not like I'm not just doing version 2 of, math with Python. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, I think it's for folks who, I think like in your case, Blake, you're good at a lot of different things. Like you can kind of you're good at honing your material in a certain direction. And not everyone is either good at that or really wants to do that. Like they might have a really clear idea of what they want to publish and they're not really looking to like adjust it based on the publisher's list. So for folks who are listening who they feel like maybe they fall into that category, be looking at the full spectrum of publishers who you might want to work with. And self-publishing is an option as well. I mean, I'm a traditional publisher at heart, so I don't always recommend self-publishing, but it is a suitable direction for a lot of folks. But certainly, like look at O'Reilly, look at Wiley, Pearson. Manning, No Starch Press, Pact. Like, there's quite a lot who publish in this space who and you can pitch multiple publishers at a time. So, and if you'd like help with that, that's where I can help you. But that's the idea is like, don't feel like you have to get you kind of trained in on one publisher and what they're looking for. You have the option to pitch elsewhere. And like every publisher is really different. I reference Wiley and O'Reilly a lot. I just think that their process is really good. And I haven't like sold anything to Manning or No Starch just yet. So I have like less knowledge there. But yeah, I think it was really fun working with Wiley. They've been really easy, I think. It sounds like, you really enjoyed your time working with them too.
Yeah, I think at first too, there was a little bit of a learning curve, right? So when you're trying to make sure that you fit it into their typesetting, type things, there's always a learning curve. But once you get used to it, I my word is still in their typesetting like
Yeah,
a template. So, yeah, it's once you get into it, it gets going and you're going off to the
that's
races.
great. Yeah. Yeah, different publishers will have different expectations in terms of how they want you to craft your content. So, that's another thing to keep in mind too. It's and sort of what process works best for you. So, let's talk a little bit about your like teaching. And how I mean, we're in a new era now with like all these LLMs and Gen AI tools and things like that. I imagine that's affected your teaching in a lot of ways, both from kind of what you're expecting your students to be able to do and how, and then as well like how you potentially you're using these tools in crafting your program and the structure of your courses. But I'd love to hear a little bit of like where do you think you've seen the biggest changes and adjustments?
Man, yeah, I'll just casually bust out the biggest thing that happened to education, and in many years, I'll be able to wrap up in about 2 minutes.
Sure.
Um, no, there's so much that has changed, to be honest. I mean, I don't want to say I can't remember, but it's just amazing how far we've come. And I was thinking about this really deeply just the other day. I think we're just at the surface. So let me start with how LLMs have changed education, right? So first off, it seems pretty obvious, right? I mean, a lot of these LLM tools, one of their first applications was like, how can I as a student cheat on an exam? Right? How can I have it write my essay? How can I have it answer my multiple choice? So, I mean, a lot of faculty, a lot of professors, a lot of teachers in general, their first knee-jerk reaction is like, "Oh, this is such a bad tool because, my students are using it to cheat, and I need to give them a stamp of approval that says like this student knows this material, and if they're cheating, then that must mean that LLMs are bad." However, kind of as time has evolved, a lot of teachers, including myself, have realized that, this could be a really good opportunity, right? I mean, a lot of my students, the things that I'm asking of them today were unimaginable 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? Because For a lot of students, they're able to go from intro material to really advanced, really cool things in a little time, right? And in Python, think about how lots of us learn Python, right? In particular, we learn it because we want to build something, right? Whether or not that's an app or even some kind of data science tool or something like that. I mean, LLMs help you build something. That's undisputed. So it's changed education. I think it's changed education for the better. I think it's changed probably everybody's lives a little bit for the better at this point. And there's just so many different things we can talk about.
Yeah. I love that perspective. It's one I don't often hear from teachers. So that's very optimistic. So, yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about like how do you handle the kind of like cheating aspect? Do you just allow folks to use LLMs, or do you kind of craft a different kind of assessment that is not so easily sort of solved with an LLM?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of have a personal responsibility approach to the cheating market, whether it's LLMs or something else. When I give my students assignments, I take it kind of as a personal responsibility to make sure that not all assignments can be cheated on, if that makes sense. Right? And if you think about even how you might have done school however many years ago, right? I mean, I had some assignments that I was able to go use a Google for. I had some assignments that I did not. I had some assignments I had in class. It's the same approach, right? I just have to make sure that for example, if I give an essay or if I give a short written assignment, I have to realize that either one, that's probably going to come back with LLM written content or have that expectation, or I just need to adjust the expectations for the assignment, maybe, or maybe just change the assignment overall, right? So those are some of the things that have changed on the cheating front. I don't think it's all bad, right? I mean, yes, there's a lot of things that LLMs can help you cheat on, but you have to remember, and this is especially for the other educators, it's been kind of a dark couple of years, right? So when we had COVID and we shift most everything to online, it was kind of a dramatic shift, right? Because we started giving a lot more leeway to students because they're going through this pandemic, they're going alone, maybe they're working at their parents' house, and it's just difficult for them. LLMs came out at the same time as most of us were locked down or at least working from home. But as soon as we come out of that, boom, there's this tool that helps everybody cheat or on things. And so it's been kind of a tug and pull for a lot of educators. But I'll say in general, if you take the same approach as we've always taken, right? A mix of assignments. Some assignments I do allow them to use LLMs on, others I don't. Just trying to see what they actually know, and it's not always about what the LLM knows.
Yeah. Do you use any kind of like AI detection kind of software? Would that even be helpful for you? Or is it like you can tell? You can tell when AI is being used.
Okay. We all, of course, most universities have this ability, right? They have something, but it's my personal kind of thing that I don't think it works very well, right? It's kind of statistically motivated, and so detecting whether or not an LM wrote something is difficult, right? And so I can tell. Most of the times you can tell, right? Bullet points are a big giveaway. Of course, emojis. Hopefully, my students don't put emojis in there, but if there's emojis, I know that that's probably not your writing. And of course, no one has spelling or grammatical mistakes anymore, which is actually better in some senses. But yeah, so you can tell I don't like to use the software because I don't think, one, I don't think it works very well, and two, I think it's hard to accuse a student of cheating without actually seeing them in the act. Right? I mean, just like any crime, we can't accuse them of cheating if they have a right answer if I didn't actually see them use an LM. So, yeah.
Whew, it makes me happy I'm not an educator these days. It's hard.
Yeah.
How do you think about teaching like Python now? Is that different than you would have, pre LLM days? And it sounds like, if students can get from kind of like square one to more advanced very quickly, then like using LLMs in this process is helping your students get further along faster, helping them build stuff with Python faster.
Yes. So what a loaded question again. I mean, these are topics we could do whole hours on, but
Totally.
learning Python. So when I learned Python, it was like the old way, right? I had my syntax guide, I learned like the for loops and while, and then I had to go learn what packages were relevant, mostly through Anaconda, right? Seeing which ones were like important for scientific learning and things like that. And of course, LMs have changed that, right? Even students that don't learn programming necessarily, they can just go in and plug something in and get a Python script and run it and see if it works. So learning Python has changed. For me personally, it was really difficult because, like I said, I had learned Python the older way, learning the syntax first. And so I almost had to relearn how to teach and learn Python, if that makes sense,
Ah,
right?
it
Because,
does.
yeah, because everybody who's learning Python today, like, yeah, maybe they go learn the syntax, maybe they go learn the ecosystem, but most of it's just going to kind of be serendipitous, right? They just type something in and, oh, look at this. It says import, NumPy. Well, I don't know what that is, but it does this matrix algebra. So, yeah, it was quite a challenge, I think, at first. And so the way my students learn Python, I still go through syntax, but the time frame is significantly condensed, right? Because they don't have to memorize it anymore. But we're able to build things a lot faster, and it excites them more because they see the cooler things they can build. They can build a website, they can build an app, um, whatever it might be. And so I think again, just like everything, it's been positive.
Awesome. Yeah, and then correct me if my assumptions are wrong here, but I imagine like LLMs were not like really built to do like good math. So like has like the emergence of LLMs like changed the way you teach math at all, or or maybe less of a change than the way you might teach like a code, a programming language.
That's a good question. I think the programming language has definitely dramatically changed. I think math is one of those foundational things that yeah, it's changed a little bit. But yeah, like you said, LLMs aren't the best at math. Of course, they keep getting better, and who knows, by the time this podcast comes out, they may be really great, right? But yeah, you still need to know math, still got to make sure it's accurate. When we talk about math, of course, there's many different branches, right? And the way LLMs approach the different branches, like just say algebra versus statistics, that has dramatically changed, right? Algebra and LLMs, it doesn't really mix as well, right? But of course, LLMs and statistics, that has actually changed, right? So my students' ability to do statistics in a meaningful way with LLMs is gone way above and beyond, right? So yeah, it depends on the subcategory of math as well.
Yeah, good. Like, tell me a little bit more about that. Is that because LLMs are predictive that it like aligns better with statistics and less with algebra, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'd say predictive, but I also say there's a little bit of a logical element to statistics, right? So statistics, yeah, it does have some formulas, but there's a lot of like when you see this data, here's some prescriptive type methodology you can use on this type of data. And a lot of things with statistics, which drives, the regular math people crazy, is that there are multiple ways to get multiple different answers, right? There's not just one specific number. And so take a data set, right? So if you just have a rudimentary data set and you're trying to find housing prices based on characteristics of homes, for example, it sounds very simple, but there are many different ways you can approach that problem, right? So whether or not you're using just linear regression or some other kind of model, or whether or not you're just doing t-tests, and then how you interpret all of those variables, whether or not there's multicollinearity or all these different things. Those are the things that LLMs are actually really good at flagging for my students. So like when they go to, let's just say they're trying to predict these housing prices with this data set, the LLM's able to tell them, hey, you should look out for multicollinearity, or hey, warning, bedroom and bathrooms are related. Don't put them in the same predictive model as the housing price. So those are the kind of things I think are getting a lot better actually with math and LLMs.
That's great. That's really great.
Mhm.
As you said, we could go on forever about a lot of these topics, but we are running out of time. What's next for you? You've wrapped up your first book. Sort of, what are you planning to work on next, or sort of are you kind of really just focused on your teaching?
I took some time after writing the first book, and I think this is common for authors. Like you write the first book and you say, "I'll never do that again." Um, but as I look back, I think I'd like to start a new book, maybe more in the LLM education space or something like we've been discussing here today. And so well, I don't know. I guess that next topic. I think I have a lot to say, and I'm ready to say it. So yeah, let's figure that out, Jess.
Let's get another book going. I love to
Yeah.
hear it. I know. It is an addictive process, and it is true. Everyone's always like, "No, I'm done. I'm done for a while," and then you're like, "Well, I do have other ideas. Like I could do it again." So,
Yeah.
I love it. Well, let's make sure folks, they can go get your book now, Applied Math with Python, by Wiley, and available wherever books are sold. Is there anything else, anywhere people should find you, or anything else that you want to plug?
People can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on my website, blakerayfield.com, which also has links to the book. I love to connect with any of the people who read the book. I've already gotten some feedback from individuals. And so hopefully get out there and get your copy today.
Brilliant. Love it. Blake, thanks so much for joining the podcast today. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to working with you on your next book. And if you enjoyed conversations like this, stay tuned for more. We've got some other really exciting guests coming on the podcast in the weeks to come. So thanks. And Blake, have a good one. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Jess. Bye.